There's always that one last chord on that one. I learned, don't jump the chord. Don't do it. Hey, good morning. It is wonderful to see everybody today. Those of you that are tuning in online, thank you so much. If you're out on the atrium, I think we got the sound going out there. I thought I saw somebody come in, so it's good. If you're listening in partway through the week, wonderful. Thank you so much. Nice to see everybody today. If you're a guest today, first time online, in person, welcome to a space, to a church, to a community that cares deeply for those folks that feel spiritually disconnected or disenfranchised, or you might be deconstructing your faith. I'm so glad you're here. My name is Ryan, I'm the lead pastor, and my pronouns are he, him. I'm a white, cisgendered, heterosexual person born into a Christian home. Privilege jackpot in America. Good for me. But not so good for a lot of folks. And part of my spirituality, part of my understanding of the gospel is that we lay down our privileges, we set those aside, and we build those same privileges for everyone else, and we give of ourselves, and we make those sacrifices, and we recognize the injustices in our world. And so that's what it means to live a life that's committed to the peacemaking path of Jesus, to justice, to righteousness, or what Jesus would call the kingdom of heaven. Philippians chapter 2 says that this Jesus was the Christ and laid down all kinds of privileges, set them all aside, and took on the form of a servant. And this is the path that we're seeking to follow, that we're learning to walk here. So whoever you are, wherever you are, however you've come into this space right now, whether you are certain about things, whether you are skeptical of things, hopeful or hurting, you are welcome here to come with all of yourself, authentically who you are. And I hope you will stick around. I hope you'll join us on this peacemaking path of Jesus together. We're in a series called Rethink. Let's do a little quick rewind, okay, before we jump in, just in case you haven't been here. What did we do? Well, 2 weeks ago, we started week 1, and we talked about our thoughts. Give you a second. Do you remember that? We talked about our thoughts. And we said not every thought is true, but every thought is powerful. Every thought has power. And if we don't learn to rethink our thoughts, rethink the lies that sometimes creep in, they start running the show. And then last week, we kind of pivoted a little bit, and we turned our attention to the big idea of feelings. Feelings. Nothing more, right? We talked about those feelings. And here's the thing. We said feelings are real, but they're not always reliable, right? And we said that they're great fiction writers. They can write some pretty awesome fiction about our lives, about ourselves, if we will let them. And it all goes back to our anchor verse, kind of the one verse out of our scriptures that we're kind of holding to, that's kind of driving the ship, right? This idea from Philippians chapter 4, verse 8, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, pleasing, commendable, right? These are the things that we're trying to fix our minds on, and that is the story that's worth living.
Where is he? I know he's here. Where? Where is he?
Yeah.
I know he's here. The Joker.
Yeah. He was here, but we're kind of in the middle of something, Batman.
I heard the Joker was spreading lies about spooky music.
Yeah, I heard that too, you know.
Have you ever danced with the devils in the moonlight? That's what it's like if you listen to the Joker's lies. He doesn't want you to know the truth. Spooky Palooza is a chance for every family to feel safe, welcomed, and loved. Radical hospitality. That's why we do it. It's on purpose.
Yeah, a little bit. You're right, Batman. I mean, that's like, we do believe hope is here. It's on the signs. This is the one event that we have, one of the events that is the clearest ways that we live out all of our values, right? Generosity and inclusion and wisdom and creativity and fun. It's all there in this one event.
Creativity.
Yeah, that's what I just said.
Generosity.
Yeah.
Inclusive.
Yeah.
Wisdom.
Yeah. No. You are a little intimidating, though, but No. Like
The
that.
Joker hates all of it.
Yeah. That's fair. But that's kind of why we need everybody to be a part of it, making it happen, volunteering, donating, inviting friends, the whole thing, right?
So sign up.
Ooh, yes.
Donate.
Yes.
Donate.
Okay.
Bring candy.
Okay.
Bring a lot of candy. Because when you do, you're creating a space where families discover, maybe for the first time, that hope is here.
This is okay. Well, that's a first for me. It's a first. Okay, that felt very like the marketing department wrote that script. I don't know. It felt very, very on point. So, yeah, we'll just keep on going forward. I don't know what is happening here today, but all right. Let me ask you a question. How many of you love a good shortcut? Right? You all of a sudden one day discover a good short. I know I do. I love it when my navigation platform directs me and says, you'll save 2 minutes. I'm like, yes. I just won like the gold medal for time management. The national anthem starts playing in the background. I have won, right? But here's the thing, like we all know that not all of our shortcuts are created equal, right? Sometimes there's shortcuts that they're missing some information in the navigation system, right? And you think you're on this shortcut, but sometimes, right? Sometimes we take that familiar shortcut and then it's like, there's some things we don't know about. There's some construction, there's an ambulance there's an accident, there's something going on, right? And while we take those shortcuts because we think they're going to be wonderful, and they are, most of the time they're great. Just like we take those shortcuts in our physical lives to save some time and energy, we also take shortcuts in our mental world. Did you know that? And we do this very efficiently. Like your brain is wired very effectively to take all kinds of shortcuts. And we call these mental shortcuts schemas. Have you ever heard this term schema? That's what happens in our brains, right? Now, if you don't know what a schema is, it's just kind of this fancy word that we use for mental shortcuts. It's scripts, like code that your brain runs without asking you. Your brain doesn't go, would it be okay if I ran this schema? No, it just does it automatically. So think about a restaurant. How many of y'all have been to a restaurant? Oh, hi, Joker. It's very strange that you're here today too. All right. So think about a restaurant. Most of us have been to a restaurant. Traditionally, you walk into a restaurant and you just kind of know the drill. You go to the counter, you wait, they seat you down, they hand you a menu, you order, you eat, you pay, you leave, right? Now, we don't reinvent that wheel every time. We don't kind of have to think about it. That's a schema. It saves you a lot of time, keeps life moving forward. Now, schemas are great until they're not, right? Until you walk into one of those restaurants that does things all screwed up, out of order, right? Where like you order at a counter, but the counter's like in the back. Or you sit down and then they come and they tell you about things and then they say, go order. Or crazier, you pay first, including the gratuity, which makes no sense to me because I have no idea what's getting ready to happen. And then you go order, right? So those schemas, right, they work well. But then all of a sudden we find ourselves in a space where like, wait, this isn't, do I pay? Do you take can I? And you just kind of like leave, right? You get frustrated, you're like, I'm out. I'm too old for this. Right? This is too different. We have schema about church. We show up. You expect there to be tables around. You expect them to be coffee. Right? We have these schemas. And when our schema doesn't match, we kind of get frustrated. But here's the thing. Like when it comes to mental shortcuts, these schemas, right? They're not always helpful. And some of the ones that are extremely unhelpful are our emotional schemas. And that's the way in which our brains kind of take and interpret our thoughts. They interpret our feelings. They interpret the events around us. And there's these scripts, right, that we've learned about our feelings. And those scripts run. And the scripts run about our feelings. And those scripts tell us how long they should last. They tell us, whether or not they're acceptable. If you have ever experienced acute grief, you know that there's all these schemas in your mind that tell you, I shouldn't still be feeling this way. Why am I not over it? Whatever it might be. That's kind of a schema in your world, in your mind, that is telling you how you should think about your feelings. And so these schemas that they run through, the scripts that go on in our mind, it's not just that I feel sad, let's say. It's I feel sad, and sadness means I'm weak. Right? That's a schema that maybe got developed in you or I. It's not just that I feel anxious. The schema in our mind takes us to I feel anxious, which means I'm broken. There's something wrong with me. Or there's a schema that says, oh, I feel angry. And then maybe you grew up in like a Christian tradition or a pattern that says, well, if you are angry, then you're not a very good Christian. If you're angry, you're just kind of this bad person. Now you see the problem, right? The emotion, we've talked about these, they're real. But the schema, which brings the story that we attach to it, turns that emotion into this verdict, into what it is. Right? And so here's the thing. It moves from being just a feeling to being what we'll call a thought feeling, like this combination, right? It's not just a thought, it's not just a feeling, but when they come together, and that's kind of what we're doing today, is talking about how these thoughts and feelings come together through these schemas. Now, what short circuits the shortcut? Right? What is it about? Why is it that our brains tend to take these feelings, that we hit the enter button, the schema runs, and then it turns into these kind of negative verdicts about ourselves? Well, why is that? Well, I'm glad you asked. That's a brilliant question. That's why you all go to such a beautiful, wonderful church. And I'm going to tell you why. It's our negativity bias. You've heard me talk about this before. It's our negativity bias. Our negativity bias profoundly influences these emotional schemas. Like our negativity bias is just kind of built into that code, right? And here's where it gets even trickier, right? When we really start to dig in and think about it. Now, do you remember what Allison Ledgewood's research tells us about this? Of course you don't, right? Why would you? Because you're not a geek about this like I am, okay? So here's the thing. Allison Ledgewood is a social psychologist and a professor at UC Davis. And she studies how our minds tend to get us stuck on the negative. And in her 2013 TEDx talk, where she talked about this idea of being stuck in the negatives and then how to get unstuck, she shows us how people naturally hold on to the losses and setbacks more than the gains and successes. Like if I were to pull you aside and start asking you questions about your life, you would be far more likely to tell me very vividly about the negative experiences you had, more so than the positive ones. Right? It's why if we're in a group of people and we say, hey, tell me some good news. Tell me some good news. It's like chirp, 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 right? Hey, what can we be thinking about? What can we be praying about? Right? Because our brains just, that's the way it happens. And her research shows us that while those positive emotions that we experience and they're perfect and we love them and they're wonderful, they fade quickly. But the negativity, right? The negative ones, they cling to us like little gremlins. And they shape our outlook way more than we realize. They become part of that code. And unless we learn to actively work against that bias, our minds are just going to continually to default to the negative story. Continually default to this negative verdict, even when it's not the whole story. So our brains, she says, are like Velcro for the negative and Teflon for the positive. So when the negative thing comes into our brains, it's just like we suck that up and we're like, yes, that's exactly right. But then when somebody gives us a compliment, what do? Oh, shucks. Right? We can't just say thank you. That's hard for us. That's difficult for us. So the negative emotions, they stick and they multiply, but the good stuff just slides right off. And so now we're getting this triple whammy, all right? So hang in there with me. Here's the real big issue. It's this triple whammy, a feeling that's real. I would never deny your feeling. Your feeling is real, my feeling is real. But then we have a schema that will automatically translate and tell us what that feeling means. And then you have a brain that refuses to let go of the negative story, right? Which means now you're going to hold on to that meaning which was interpreted as negative, and it just stays there with you. And that triple whammy will create an incredible amount of distress in our lives. Some pretty significant distress, especially in the way we see ourselves, in the way we see our circumstances, in the way we see others, etc. So you see the problem? The emotion is real. The schema, the story that we attach to it, turns that emotion into a verdict. And now it's not just a feeling or a thought. It's what we said earlier. It's this big idea. It's this thought feeling, this whole narrative about the world in which we live, who I am in this world, how things are apt to function. And so our thought feelings, they very quickly stop describing an experience and they quickly start defining the experience. Right? It's not just what I feel or I think about myself, it's what I am. And we move from statements about something we've experienced or we've done into these statements that are identity forming. And so these emotional schemas, they don't simply offer us a description of how we think and feel, but they start to define us and concretize who we think we are. And here's what is so impressive about you and me. We metabolize this stuff like nothing. I wish I could metabolize sugar like I metabolize thoughts that are negative about me. Right? I don't burn that sugar off. I just store it. And but why can't I do that? But like, man, that schema, like we just suck it in and it just becomes a part of who we are. And we never give ourselves the space to really think what's happening. Now remember, Scripture, in our tradition, Scripture, the way we talk about Scripture here is it's a mirror that we can hold up to our lives. And this Scripture, when we hold it up to ourselves, we can see patterns of our human behavior. We can gain wisdom from it. We can see patterns of the way in which we think about God as human beings, both healthy and unhealthy. And this process, this schema, this way we function, we see it functioning in Numbers chapter 13 and 14. Going to go OT on everybody today, all right? We're going to go Hebrew Bible again. We're staying in there with these God. We've got these great stories that really can, if we hold them up to us, they'll give us a mirror, all right? So what wisdom can we get from this story? Well, in Numbers 13 and 14, in case you haven't read Numbers recently, which is perfectly fine, okay? Not one I would consider tell you to go start with, okay? In Numbers and 13, we meet the Israelites in this grand story of their formation, their founding, and they're right on the edge of what they believe is their promise, this space, this land, this promised land. The story tells us they had seen miracles, they had seen plagues, the Red Sea parted, manna in the wilderness, all kinds of things. And so in the story, they send 12 spies out to go recruit and go look at this land that they say is their promised land, where they're going to go. And so these 12 go out and look, but when the 12 spies return from scouting out this land of Canaan, their emotions and their thoughts start to write the story. These 10 spies, they interpret through a lens of fear. They're like, we can't do this. It's crazy. We're grasshoppers. It's all kinds of stuff. Fear creates a schema. The schema hardens into a verdict. We're doomed. What are we doing? Okay, that's the big idea. So let's take a look at the story, some of the text that we have. So Numbers 13, 27 through 29, we see that their feelings are settling in. So they're giving their report back. This is what they say. We came to the land to which you sent us. It flows with milk and honey, which I never thought was a good thing, quite honestly. I was like, that sounds disgusting, but whatever, okay? And this is its fruit. They brought back some fruit with it. It's this great place. But here's the problem. The people who live there, they're strong. The towns are fortified, very large. And besides, we saw the descendants of Enoch there. That's scary stuff. You all have no idea who those people are. It's all right, you don't need to know. They're just scary. They were scared. They're big people. We saw the Amalekites. They live in the land of the Negev. The Hittites, the Jebusites, the Amorites. They live in the hill country. The Canaanites live by the sea and along the Jordan. Panic. So the spies are out for 40 days and they return with these big feelings, right? They needed a parent to be like, them are some big feelings. Let's talk about them, right? I think it's a good idea to talk about big feelings, by the way. Right? They're filled with fear, intimidation, insecurity. But here's the thing. One of the spies, a guy named Caleb, he senses all this. He sees the doubt. He sees what's happening. He's kind of looking around. And the text says that people get kind of quiet. And Caleb is like, let's go. Let's go. Let's go take it at once and occupy it. We're able to overcome it. Okay, sidebar. All right, can we pause for a second here? Because there's a word in here I don't like. And it's right there in our text that we need to honor it. Are you ready? Let's go occupy it. So can we pause for a second? I love to do these little sidebars because we need to talk about jarring language that is inconsistent with the peacemaking path of Jesus. Occupying other people's land and stealing their homes is inconsistent with the peacemaking path of Jesus. Can I get an amen? Okay, so, whew. It's getting hot in here. Okay, listen. This language of conquest, of taking land, right, already lived in by other people, problematic. In the cultural and historical context of Israel's storytelling, of their creating of a national identity, the language made sense. Nations saw the world as a sum-zero game. We win, you lose, we win. This was very natural for them then to use their understanding of the divine to justify their behavior and to think about the divine in warrior terms. Could you imagine if our dominating metaphor of our tradition was God as a mother? What would world history have looked like for the last 2,000 years? But the dominant metaphor that comes out of antiquity, and it's not just our tradition, it's not just in the ancient Near East, is the idea of God as warrior. So it was very natural for that, and it was very natural to think of God being with them to overcome the enemy, the other, right? But unfortunately, this isn't just ancient history. It's not. And this mindset that we see in this story of conquest, of occupying land, of believing God is on our side against them has tragically echoed throughout human history. And stories like this have been used to baptize violence, have been used to other. It's this story, it's these mindsets that have fueled wars and colonization and displacement and oppression. And today we see its devastating effects in places like Gaza, where generations of people have suffered under violence and occupation and fear. And we see it in all kinds of places all around the world, not just in Gaza, not just in the Middle East. But as followers of the peacemaking path of Jesus, we have to be clear. This way of seeing the world is not the spirit of love revealed in Jesus. We have to be clear about that. The spirit of love does not sanction violence in God's name. The spirit of love does not justify dispossession or occupation. The spirit of love is revealed in compassion, in justice, in right behavior towards one another. Righteousness is the word. That is not moral superiority. It is right behavior between others. Righteousness, in seeking peace, in giving dignity to all people. So let's hold this story with honesty, and we can still gain from it, we can learn from it, but let's hold it with honesty that some of what we hear reflects fear and nationalism that were found in its human authors. And if we hold it up as a mirror, it's full of truth. Does that make sense? It's filled with truth, just not on the surface. I don't personally believe that God ever told people to go and take other people's homes. But I do believe humans do that. That's a truthful statement. And we say God told us to, right? So there's truth in the scripture, but it's not a truth that I'm following. It's a truth that I'm living in a Christ-like way to change. Make sense? Okay, out of the sidebar. So we don't baptize those parts, okay? But we look at it for deeper lessons, like look at the thought feelings and how do we choose to trust courage and peace over fear and violence, right? That's what we want to look at. So now we turn back to the text. We see how those thought feelings started to take over the crowd. Now, in verse 31 through 33, we see this schema of the thought feelings kind of emerge. So Caleb is like, let's go. And the men who had gone up with him, it says, they said, we're not able to go up against these people. Caleb's insane. He's nuts. He's screwed. Don't listen to him. He's had some bad porridge. I don't know. But I don't know. He's got bad eyesight. We didn't take him to the optometrist before we went. I have no idea what's going on. He left his glasses. But they are stronger than we are. And so they brought this report back to the Israelites, an unfavorable report of the land that they had spied out, saying, the land that we've gone through as spies is a land that devours its inhabitants. All the people that we saw in it are great size. We saw the Nephilim too. That's crazy. It's like a bunch of Bigfoots walking around. It's like, and to ourselves, listen to this line, we seemed like grasshoppers, and so we seemed to them. What's the schema here? We're small, they're strong, and this means defeat. Notice that emotional schema at work. Fear isn't just describing the situation, right? It's defining their identity. What did they say? We are grasshoppers. Fear wasn't just an emotion. Fear was a verdict about who they were. Classic negativity bias right there. And even though Joshua and Caleb, they insist that God is with them, the people cling to this negative story. And in chapter 14, verses 1 through 4, we see the consequences of what we'll call uninterrogated thought feelings or emotional schemas. What are the consequences when we don't interrogate this schema? It says, all the congregation raised a loud cry, and the people wept that night. And all the Israelites complained against Moses and Aaron. The whole congregation. First of all, I can relate, but we'll skip on. Okay. All the congregation raised up people tonight, and all the Israelites complained against Moses and Aaron. The whole congregation said to them, oh my Lord, this is so familiar. If only we had died in the land of Egypt. If only we could go back. If only we had died in the wilderness. Why is Yahweh, why is our understanding of God, why is the Lord bringing us into this land to fall by the sword? Our wives and our little ones will become plunder. Oh, the scariest thing they've ever done. Would it not be better for us to go back to Egypt? And they said, let's choose a captain and go back to Egypt. Let's go back. The consequences of uninterrogated thought feelings is devastating. Fear becomes despair. Despair rewrites their past. Egypt was better. Slavery was better. The hardship was better. And that schema, that shortcut blocks a vision for a future. We can go forward. They'd rather return to slavery and trust that freedom is possible. Might look different, but they'd rather go back. And in this whole story, the Israelites never stopped to question their thoughts. Never stopped to question the emotions. Never stopped to interrogate them. So don't miss this. Uninterrogated thought. Uninterrogated thought feelings, those emotional schemas, they turn distress into disaster. If we don't learn to interrogate them, a thought feeling whispers, and it's a voice that is so believable. You want to know why that voice is believable? Because it's yours. I'm hoping that the voice in your head that you hear is your own. If it's not, fair, but we should talk. But we hear our voice, and our voice we think is trustworthy, but it's just filled with these schemas that are taking shortcuts, and it's all filled by that negative bias. And so the thought feeling whispers, this is who you are. And the schema says, if that's who you are, this is how the story ends. And the negativity bias makes sure that the bad chapter sticks longer than the good. So how do we deal with this in our everyday normal lives? Like, how do we take a story, right? How do we take this and what do we do? Well, here's the thing. I want to encourage you to take your perpetrating thoughts to the interrogation room. Like, give them a good perp walk, right? Like, become a master at arresting and interrogating the perpetrating feeling thoughts that come into your life. Arrest them. Sit them down in the interrogation room of your heart. Shine that bright light right in their face and start asking them some tough, poignant questions. Maybe it's time to play good cop, bad cop. Maybe you start off nice and easy. Maybe the good cop walks in with a little thought, feeling, emotion at the table, offers a soda and a snack, a little compassion, says, hey, thought, feeling, when'd you get into town? Been here long? Ask the thought feeling, is this really about this present moment, or have maybe you been here a while? Is maybe this more about my past experience? Is maybe this more about this one person who mistreated me than it is about this moment that I'm feeling? Maybe you've been here a while. Maybe, you know what, thought feeling? What are you trying to protect me from? Because sometimes our thought feelings are actually trying to protect us from something they believe will happen because of something that did happen. I'm going to say that again because it's a little like who's on first? No, what's on first, right? So one more time. Sometimes our thought feelings are actually trying to protect us from something they believe will happen because of something that did happen. See this all the time. You're entering into a relationship. After one relationship ends, person does something, thought feeling kicks in, and you immediately do what? Like we write the script that this person must just be like that person, and so your body, your brain, your spirit is trying to protect you, okay? So it's a fair question. So good cop can ask some nice questions, but at some point in time, I think bad cop should come in the room. This is a metaphor, by the way. I don't think any cop should be bad, we're going with a TV trope, okay? It's a trope, all right? This is going to end up on Facebook. I know it will, okay. So maybe bad cop needs to come in the room, snatch up that soda and drink, throw it in the trash can. Say, what gives you the right to define me? What gives you the right to define me? Why do you get to tell me what I am? Maybe you have to ask that thought to get right in its face. Haven't brushed your teeth for a few days. Bring the bad, funky breath. Be like, what exactly are you trying to steal from me? What are you trying to kill in me? What are you trying to destroy around me? And maybe you interrogate that thought feeling. You ask these tough questions. And then what do? You spend some time outside of the interrogation room and you put the pieces together and you solve the crime with your partner. Take the answers, take those questions, pray, meditate, talk with a friend, talk with a therapist, right? Talk with a group of people you trust. Bring to them, these are the questions I asked of it. I wrote it down. This is what it told me. And I've got to bring this thought into captivity. I've got to sentence this thing. And if we'll start doing this, if we'll start interrogating those powerful thought feelings that are products of schemas in our lives that stick because of the negativity bias, when we start asking these kinds of questions, you know what happens? We strip the thought feelings of their automatic power. Like we just strip them. We disassociate from the thought feeling, so to speak. We let it be its thing. We shift from being the suspect in the room, interrogating ourselves, to now the suspect is the thought feeling. Where did that come from? Why is it there? What's it trying to protect me of? Who says it gets to define what I am? What is it trying to steal from me and kill in me and destroy around me? So rather than shining that light on us, which is filtered through that negativity bias, we can shine it on the thought feeling. And interrogating and examining those emotional schemas, they help us reclaim control of our lives in the midst of emotional distress. We reclaim that power that the distress is eroding away at us. And so as we come to a space of communion this morning, as we pause and reflect on this very complicated automatic process that happens inside of us, what Paul would say, the power of sin at work in the world that seeks to kill and steal and destroy. What is it that love is inviting you into today? What is God inviting you into? Maybe you're here this morning and you have never made any kind of a faith commitment. You never thought about church. You're not sure why you're here. They're just really pretty. And they said, come to church with me. And you were like, yes, as long as I get to sit by you. That's great. But maybe you sat here and you were like, oh, the Joker, that's kind of weird. Batman, okay. But something was said today and it kind of sparked and you're a little interested. Well, I would encourage you to maybe this week watch an episode of a podcast called the Being Well podcast. And it's called Emotional Intelligence, Improving Self-Awareness, Self-Regulation, and Empathy. If you check that box on the Connect card, drop it in there. As long as your email's on the front, if your email is in our system, we'll send you the link right to it. Listen to it while you're in the car. It's just like this first step. And this episode gives tools for noticing how those inner stories, they shape our emotions and our actions. Maybe you're kind of new to walking the peacemaking path of Jesus. Maybe you've been in a space of deconstruction and your reconstruction and healthy spirituality, and you're thinking, okay, I'm going to try this thing, and there's something about Jesus, there's something about the Bible, there's something about all of this, and so you're kind of new in this peacemaking path. Well, I got an episode of that same podcast for you. It's called How to Regulate Yourself. How to Regulate Yourself. And this episode really discusses riding those emotional waves, learning to label our emotions, maintaining stability without being overwhelmed. And now, for those of you veteran peacemakers out there, the longtime people who are like, Ryan, challenge me. I can listen to a podcast any day. I want something spiritual. First of all, terrible thought. I hope you never have it, okay? But you're thinking, I want something more like churchy. Okay, well, here you go. Take that one schema that's been running your life. Maybe it's, I'm not enough. Maybe it's, I'll always be alone. And I want to encourage you to go sit with that in an interrogation room. Set up an appointment. Arrest that thought and sit down with it. And maybe don't do it alone. Get somebody with you. Get a trusted friend, a therapist, a spiritual director. Let them be your partner detective and put that perp on the stand. Like, interrogate it. Figure out where it's coming from. Because here's the thing, and do it with someone, because here's the thing, even those of us in the room that are the most seasoned followers of Jesus, I've been in some way, shape, or form in this game of Christianity since I was 4 years old. And I am 22. That is not meant to be a joke. Even those of us who have been around this path for a long time, we know. We know you need more than Jesus. I'm going to say that out loud. This idea, all you need is Jesus. No, I need a sandwich too, okay? I need a sandwich. I'm going to need water. I know this sentiment. All I need is Jesus, but it's not true. You need more than an idea of Jesus. You need more than you need lots of things in your life. You need people. We're created for that. And we need others to help us see other honest people. So maybe do that. So I'm going to invite you, if you're able to stand right now, and we're going to have communion together. Everyone is welcome to the table, whether you're sitting at your own table and you're like, of course I'm welcome to my table. I'm already here. It's a metaphor. You're welcome to this table that's been set by our tradition, by the words of Jesus. Everyone is welcome to experience in these symbols unconditional love, unimaginable grace, radical hospitality. We're going to sing a song called True Colors. It's a rewrite of an old hymn. And I love some of the lyrics in this song for today because they really speak to the challenge of like interrogating our thoughts, interrogating the schemas we've been handed even from a religious perspective. And there's a lyric, there's a verse that says, I saw danger in my questions. I took captives all my thoughts. The schema there that church gives us sometimes is, oh, well, if you ask a question, then you don't have faith. And if you don't have faith, then you're probably going to go burn in hell forever and ever and ever. And that happens without even knowing it. It's a schema. And then you start interrogating. You go, wait, I was told to do all these things, but certainty was my salvation until I questioned what was taught. Now my eyes are wide in wonder, mind set free now to discern. I might not have all the answers, but I have all this life to learn. What a great meditation for us as we finish out today together, exploring how do we think about these thought feelings, arrest them so that we can focus our energy on what is pure and true and noble and wonderful. The body of Christ broken for you and the blood of Christ shed for you. Come and eat and be filled with love that you cannot ever understand.